Today I'm going to talk about IEPs, individualized education plans. The first time I looked at my son's IEP, it was bizarre to me. I had no idea what was going on. It was like a 40-page document with his assessments and goals they wanted to plan, and the language was just so difficult. This is why I wanted to help out other parents understand the IEP and different, like what I feel are the important parts of the IEP that they should really focus on. I talked to other parents, and this is one thing they really struggled with. A couple of things. Understanding what an IEP is, first of all. Um, your child will not always have an IEP, even if they have a diagnosis. So they could be diagnosed by their psychologist as autistic or ADHD, and that doesn't qualify them as they don't automatically get an IEP. It depends on the school's own assessments. They have their own criteria for earning an IEP or being considered autistic under the academic definition, which is super confusing, but it's true. So oftentimes parents will have to push for an assessment if they feel that their child needs it. Sometimes the school districts or IUs will recommend having an IEP going forward until the school district. So one important thing that I did not know, and not a lot of parents do, is that parent input is an important part of making goals. They are required to have goals that are meaningful to you as the parents. So always tell them what's important to you, make suggestions. May not always follow them if it's not necessary for school, but it's always good to mention and put it in the IEP so they know that this is something they could work on if they have the time. Um, okay. I know that for professionals, people assume that the parents have read through the IEP before the meeting and that they understood it. Otherwise, they would ask questions. That's not true. They wouldn't even know what to ask. They wouldn't know what a MAND is if that's one of their goals, that it's a request, why you're working on certain things and not working on academics at first, not working on socialization. Um, the team should be more clear about that, the IEP team, about why certain goals were put in place, what assessments were used to sort of gauge where they're aware the child is at, what needs need to be met first, or prerequisite skills need to be learned before they can access like the academic curriculum. So these are very important things, professionals. You have to be clear, give examples, always give examples. So who is on an IEP team? That includes parents should be on there, sometimes speech therapists, occupational therapists, physical therapists. If they have feeding therapy, they would be on it. A special ed teachers would be on it. Regular ed teachers would be on it. A representative of the school district is usually on the IEP. So that is a lot of people giving a lot of input. It's always best to explain everything and be clear. I know it's a very long meeting, but it is very stressful, often stressful for parents, and they feel like it's so much information and they just don't know where to start or what to focus on. So an IEP stands for Individualized Education Plan. It is a legal document under the US law. So public school systems are legally bound by this IEP decided by you and their team. However, they might not always follow the IEP exact. That is something that everyone should understand off the bat. Professionals know this, and parents, I hope you know this. Sometimes it's not intentional. It's just time constraints or absences or lack of resources, lack of trained staff. But don't just assume that if something's written in there, it's happening. You have to be active, reach out to the teachers, make sure everything's the way it's supposed to be. Just keep asking questions and have an open communication with the school teacher. You always have to ask for your child's needs. Always, if you believe that they need an IEP and that they're struggling with their academics, if they're struggling socially and they need to work on that, ask them to do an assessment for an IEP. So your rights in the IEP are that this would be legally binding, that your input would be incorporated, and that if you disagree with something, that you were allowed to do that, but that would lead to mediation or legal action. You might have to like go formally to court. Usually it doesn't get to that point and there is some compromise. Um, just let them know why you believe in something and they can try to include it as much as possible. Um, even if this is a legally binding document, again, it's not always followed. So you have to hold them accountable to this IEP. What is least restricted environment? Sometimes they mention this. This is the amount of support or setting that your child needs and how they could fit into the regular ed setting and as much as possible be alongside with their regular ed peers. Now, being in a least restricted environment could still be the special ed room. That's how much they're able to be with their students in their classrooms. That's appropriate according to the law. It is your job as parents to make sure that they're doing the best they can to include your child as much as they are able to, according to their behaviors or because of their communication needs. Just make sure they have a plan on how to get them there. So that should always be on the forefront of their mind and your mind, like what supports does my child need to be able to play with peers at recess, to sit at the cafeteria and have lunch with them, to be able to play games with them, or like you follow along in social studies or do their reading time. So you have to make sure that they know that this is important to you and have a plan in place or goals in place that will lead up to more inclusion. Okay, suggestions. Always document everything. Even if they don't like the idea, ask them to put it in that you suggested it. If they agree to something, ask them to write it in after the meeting is over. If you don't see it in the IEP, email your, not, don't text, email your teacher, your regular ed or special ed teacher and ask her to write it in there. If possible, having a fellow parent or a BCBA or an advocate can help navigate emotional situations. I have been in IEP meetings where I have ended up in tears after because it was so emotional for me. We were not agreeing on a point and we kind of were at a stalemate and I was very frustrated and emotional. And what professionals don't understand is that it is a very emotional thing to know where your child is at, especially if they have so many barriers and are so behind their age typical peers. It's not that we don't understand or know it, it's that IEP meeting, it's just like the reminder rushes back in and it is emotional and difficult. And having another person there to kind of take over when we feel that way could be helpful. For students that have a lot more needs and are more likely to be excluded from general ed, I would recommend their parents looking into getting an inclusion expert on the team if possible. These people are trained to help set up environments in a way and put goals into place in a way that your child will be include it as much as possible. Okay, another confusing area. I've asked parents what they have written in their IEPs. They have no idea if their child had access or one-on-one PCA or RBT written into their IEPs. They didn't know where to look. So I thought that would be a very important thing to talk about. So just because your child has a diagnosis and an IEP does not mean that they will have access to a one-on-one paraeducator or a PCA, that's a personal care assistant, with them at all times. And honestly, if they don't need someone and they're pretty independent, they can engage in everyday tasks, go to the bathroom. If they're able to communicate what they need, it might not even be necessary or appropriate for them to have one person on them all the time because they might get dependent on them. And we see that a lot, that children often just want to stick to their really fun adult or their paras or their RBTs because they're so friendly and they don't have trouble sharing like other kids do and are not mean. So it might not be to the benefit always having a one-on-one. However, kids who require a lot more support in their daily living skills, using the bathroom, washing hands, who are using maybe sign language or one word communications or talkers, they might require having a para adult with them all the time. Para educators are just, they're like teacher assistants. They're with your child. Our registered behavior technicians or RBTs are more skilled and trained professionals in behavior. So if your child has significant behaviors, you should ask for an RBT. Make sure they put an RBT in the IEP. So what happens if you have one-on-one or access written into the IEP or PCA? Sometimes due to staff shortages, they may say that your child doesn't need a full PCA and only needs access to the teacher assistant at times. It really depends on your child's needs. Don't just go for what they suggest. You know your child. If he requires a lot of support at home, he's probably going to need that PCA. He's probably going to need that RBT. So ask for the support and have it written into the IEP. Even if they don't agree to it, tell them to write it in that you suggested. Why is it so important that it's written in? If you ever have to take them to court and you asked them to do this, to give you you made these suggestions and they did not take them into account, that could help your case. So have everything written down. Okay, where does it say on the IEP if my child has a para or RBT? This is usually at the end of the IEP. So it's either going to be access to adult support. That means your child is probably going to share the teacher's assistant, probably when he or she requires it the most. It could be during difficult like math time where we have a lot more trouble or we struggle with reading. Maybe it's recess where we get a little handsy. So this is when access to adult support might be put into the IEP. However, just be mindful that when there's staff shortages, usually the access person is the first to go. The one that has the PCA or RBT, they will stick with your child. But if the para that's supposed to be with 3 different kids is out, most likely they won't be able to replace that person for that day. RBTs are usually the most qualified. PCAs are also good. They will be with your child all day. They are trained in supporting in academics, and often carry out behavior plans. But again, RBTs are the most qualified staff to work with kids with significant behavior problems. Okay. Some school districts are very good about writing in RBTs if they feel like the child engages in problems that might be disruptive to the classroom or aggression. Sometimes you just have to push for it. You have to ask for it. Usually they'll accommodate you, but it's kind of depends. So depending on your child's need, ask for the support and have it written in the IEP again. Okay, this is one sample of an IEP, and at the top you have all the modifications in place, all the therapies, the amount, the dates, all written down. And in the modifications according to the positive behavior support plan. So the PBSP means positive behavior support plan. These are to support your child appropriate behavior in the school setting. How can we make it easier for him to navigate, to be able to be around peers, to be able to access curriculum and their goals? So what I circled in red is the address modification in PBSP to have the personal care assistant is written in there. How many times daily when in school he has that PCA. PCA means one-on-one or RBT. Okay. If they have access, it's going to be written to access to adult support or access um to support will be written there instead of a PCA. All right. The next important thing is location of where the support is going to be received. So in this, they've written the next one. Okay. Oh, they've written the people who will support them, the core and special ed teachers and all the staff working will be aware of the IEP. Okay. Now, if you're still unsure about who a paraeducator is, this is any adult that supports your child with academics, daily tasks, or to use a behavior plan. Who is an RBT? What is an RBT? It's a registered behavior technician. This person is trained in behaviors, supervised by BCBA, the board certified behavior analyst, and is more skilled with dealing with behaviors. They receive more trainings and paras in behavior and have to adhere to, they have an ethical, they have to be complying with. Okay. Who How is it written into the IEP? This can be written to again as access to adult support, personal care assistant, or RBT. Okay, some myths about IEPs. Just because it is written in the IEP does not mean it is happening. That is just a fact. Working in schools, I know that sometimes, but even with best intentions, sometimes IEPs are not followed to the exact T. Some reasons for that would be shortages in staff absences, inexperienced staff, um, lack of supervision by a teacher or BCBA, lack of resources. They don't have enough materials to teach something. Um, like sudden behavior changes of the student. It could be that we have a month of suddenly being constipated or having other health issues. They can affect the fact that the IEP is not being followed or student illnesses or student being absent too much. These all can contribute to so it's a myth to say that every IEP is followed exactly. That is not true. It doesn't always work out that way. Even if these reasons are understandable, you as a parent have to keep pushing and addressing and asking about the IEP. Are these things being followed? Does he have this or she have this in place? Are they being taught this? Are these goals being worked on? If not, they have to find a way, they have to have plans in place to address these issues and resolve them so that they are following the IEP as you all agreed to. Um, Another misconception is, this was a big one for me, is that IEP, all the goals in the IEP are put into place, all the therapies like OT, speech, physical therapy are to support your child's needs only in the school setting. So OT will handle stuff like being able to maybe put your shoes on or being able to write lines. They might not be working on putting on clothes because that's not something you do at school. It's not needed. So the goals are all in place to help your child be successful at school. You may need outside services like ABA services or outside OT and speech to work on other functional living skills that you need at home or in the community. Just let just keep that in mind. Okay. Another question I usually like to ask about is how many hours is your child in regular or general ed? And this might not be as important to professionals, but it is important to parents. As a parent, I know that having friendships and being included into extracurricular activities is important to me. I think school is about more than academics for other kids, and it should be the same for our kids. Um, so students with severe, unfortunately, students with severe communication deficits, some that are using one word, they're signing only a couple of words, they have an AAC device. These children will often be not taken into certain general ed activities because they don't think it's appropriate for them. I completely disagree with that. Um, like morning meeting, lunch, recess, special social studies are usually times where um they are supposed to be going into the general ed, regular ed setting. And sometimes if they have too many behaviors or get too upset or have tantrums, they will sometimes some RBTs, paras, teachers will not take them during that time. Again, this could be due to staff shortages. They don't have anyone to support your child and bring them to lunch, recess, or specials. Again, they have to look into this and find more staff for your child. You have to push them. Is your child going into general ed? If they are not, why are they not going? What is the school doing to help them be in general ed more, to be able to do lunch or recess with their peers, to be able to go to specials or social studies with their peers? The severe problem behavior is usually a big reason why some classrooms, some teachers, some RBTs will not take a child into general ed. They would be like, we don't want them to get embarrassed, we don't want them to upset them. But being a good therapist, I think, is finding ways to not have them upset in that classroom, to have maybe fidgets, maybe have the iPad reinforcer so that the general ed classroom is more reinforcing, maybe having headphones if the sound is aversive. There are a lot of things that they can do, and parents, this is your job to push them to find those things, to make them aware that this is important to you. You want them to be there. Okay, so professionals for you, sometimes when parents are advocating for their children to be in general ed, there is this misconception that parents are not aware of their child's skill level or not aware of their behaviors. That is not true. We're aware of that, but we want you to work on it. We want for all of us as a team to find a way for our children to be as included as possible. And I know that schools give this line that they want this too. They want to teach them first so that they're able to be included and incorporated. But the years go by and valuable time is wasted that could be put towards developing relationships with peers, having the peers more sensitive and aware of other kids that have different needs and being able to, communicate and play with them. It's very important for parents to stress this point, and professionals need to have a better attitude about why we want inclusion. It's not because we don't know that our child only speaks one word and can't have a conversation with peers. It's about maybe he can just go play with the peers at recess. He doesn't need to communicate right now. And we know you're working on teaching those goals, but that doesn't mean that we want to lose these moments too. So that's why we do it. It's not because we don't know or we're not aware. Okay. Some red flags to that may tell you that child's not being taken to special recess or morning meetings or any other time that you've discussed with the special ed team or is written into the IEP. If there's very generic words written in the note. So they worked on an obstacle course in PE. Okay, who is they? Is what part does your child play in that PE or gym lesson? A good note would say, like, Brian had fun on the obstacle course. He was mostly independent on the steps. He stayed for 20 minutes. Even like if he was up like screaming for like 10 minutes, that would tell me that he was there. It has to be specific. If they're writing very generic things like he had lunch with peers, that tells us nothing. Be a little more specific. I know it takes a little extra time to write things in, but it would be very helpful to parents. Okay. Okay, where does it write how many hours your child is supposed to be in special ed versus general ed room? Usually in this sample IEP, it's in section 8, the educational environment. Now, a column 1, that circle is the total hours that your child spends in regular classroom. So 1.5 hours is written in for this case. Um, Total hours in a typical day, most all peers, like typical peers, are spending in the regular ed classroom, or the whole day is 6.75 hours. Now, when we calculate the percentage of how much time your child's in there, it's 22% of the day. And they have to put it in a category that the child or the student is inside the regular classroom less than 40% of the day. Make sure that this is accurate. We don't want going into maybe another school or private school, we don't want them to think that um, he was being or he or she was being fully included when they were not making that effort, and that the school was following the IEP if it says 60% and they weren't. So make sure that this is accurate. This is where in accommodations and settings, this includes the positive behavior support plan includes instruction strategies and different things that their accommodations they have in place for the student. Okay, so what is a positive behavior support plan, or PBSP? Accommodations and modifications provided to your student to help them in school. This is written by suggestions and input from the whole team, including parents. You are part of that IEP team. So you should be included when they're developing this positive behavior support plan. You can tell them what your child likes, activities like he likes to engage in, or what makes them helps them calm down, what kind of language you use to calm them down, to like, quiet hands or whatever you use that works for you. And that could really help the team. Some other things that might be included is the time, the amount of rewards they're getting, how often they're getting their rewards or reinforcement, how often are they getting breaks, do they require closer seating to the teacher or to the board or to the door, depending on what your child needs are. Does he have access to fidgets? Does he need that access to fidgets? Does he need movement breaks? Is praise one of the good reinforcers that need to be used? Does he need help with peers and so in communication? Okay, this is like what we usually focus on. The rest of it is the tiny, tiny extras that are very important and we miss. Goals and objectives are pretty clear. They're all the goals that they report and measure. These can be academic, like the academic goal is to count to 100, maybe multiplication. It could be requesting for items, labeling items, or saying words. These they have to measure and report and make sure you know how often they're supposed to report your child's progress. But just remember, I know that this was a bit concerning for me when I saw like 4 or 5 goals written in his IEP, and I'm like, oh my God, he's not working on socializing, or he's not working on playing with kids at recess. But just know that um teachers and RBTs and paraeducators do a lot, work on a lot more than just the goals written in the IEP. They help develop routines, they help develop independence. They do support peer interactions and playtimes and solving conflicts and teaching them calming strategies. So they do a lot of work that is not just in the goals and objectives. So even if your child is like not reaching 100% in their goals, doesn't mean that the school's not doing a good job, or his RBT or his PCA or his teacher's not doing a good job. It's just that they're also working on other things that you might get home and be amazed by, like your child has suddenly started playing ball with you, or is starting to say sentences, like, or independently washing their hands. These are all stuff that schools that are worked on at schools, even if they're not written in. Remember that you're allowed to make suggestions, even if you think that you're not qualified. You are allowed to make suggestions because you are an expert in your child. Um, they are not. They see them for definitely a big part of the day, but you are there at night, you're with them weekends, their holidays. You're the one who takes them to the mall. You know how they react in the doctor's office. Like, you make their tough decisions. You're the expert. Make suggestions. Oh, and always voice your concerns. If you're concerned about, I remember I was concerned about too many transitions. They had like a transition plan that I did not agree with, and I refused to let go of it because I know my child, and I knew that this would not be helpful for them. And you have to be their best advocate. Now, ask what you can do to support. While we want to be a big advocate for our child, we also want them to know that we support them, we appreciate them, and value how dedicated they are to your child. And I know that parents may not always feel this way or might not think this, but these special ed teachers are there because they want to help kids with disabilities, kids who require more help. It is a tough job, and it's not the best paying job. It requires a lot of work, a lot of paperwork. And they do it for those kids. I've seen teachers, like special teachers, they love working with your children. It is rewarding for them. I see them working with them and they love it. That's why they come to school every day. That's why they go through these very long 2-hour IEPs. Um, they want to do this. Now, what they want, and their honest communication is not always reflected because of school policies and regulations and all that. And just remember that they do try their best. It is your job to help them. If they don't always have the level of expertise in your child, or certain interventions or certain things. They might not always have the expertise, but they do try their best. It's your job to hold them accountable, because like they're also teachers who are not the best at, maybe teaching academics or maybe teaching labeling or whatnot. It's your job to stick up for your child, but also appreciate the team that works with them every day. Um, Professionals don't just read goals and IEPs, please. Give examples and give parents the benefit of the doubt. I know it's so easy to say, oh, they just want to send them into school, even if they're sick, yada, yada, yada. You better believe I send my son to school, even if he's coughing, because I also have to work. These parents also have lives, and especially with parents with children with disabilities, they need that time for their self to work on other things. They're not always resting. They don't get to hang around all day or go to the mall or get manicures, pedicures. They're usually doing other stuff that doesn't get done. Like they need to make dinner, they need to clean the house, they have to alter everything according to their child's needs. Even then, they are doing the work, but they need that time. So it's easy, it's very easy to judge. But I hope professionals learn to give them the benefit of the doubt. Um, Parents, remember, you do not have to sign the IEP until you are satisfied with everything that's written in there. Now, usually schools avoid having legal action, and so do parents. I know I wouldn't want to get into a legal battle. It deteriorates the relationship. It's not very fun. It's very expensive. So we want to be respectful. We want to be kind. We want to compromise with them. Um, Having a friendly and honest relationship with schools and teachers will really get you a long way. I know school districts are difficult, but the teachers and the RBTs and the paras, they want to be there. They want to help you, and being friendly with them and appreciating them will benefit your child and you in the long run. And that is my suggestion for you. Thank you for watching, and I hope this helped someone. Please like or subscribe so I know that it helped you. Right. Thank you.